Anthony looked dominating in the fight, but there is no way I'm that bad, right? It's obvious I was not even trying. All I care about is the money. I don't want to say I was paid to lose, but I think fans are smart enough to realize what they saw in that ring.
Right, I don't think he was there to actually fight him. What was the game plan? Stick and move, try and lunge in, try and shoot in a takedown? No, that's not how you win a boxing fight.
I didn't think it was a great AJ performance. Eventually, he did what he was supposed to do, but it wasn't the AJ performance we were looking for in terms of, this is the guy I want to go see fight Tyson Fury. But when he hit him with that right hand, and there's a picture out, Leo, if you'll find it and put it on the screen for me here, I want to say this. Everybody this week talked about Jake Paul rigged fight, Jake Paul rigs this, Jake Paul fixed fight, Jake Paul script that. Look at this picture of Jake Paul's mouth. I mean, what a railroad would look like if an earthquake hit right in the middle of it. His jaw has been separated.
Rumors are swirling online that Jake Paul may have been paid to lose. And again, that's fan talk, not facts.
Put the earnings of the Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua fight into perspective. Both fighters took home $93 million each in just 16 minutes. That's more than what Michael Jordan made in his 15-year career. Every 3 minutes, they made $15 million each, which is the same as the entire budget for one episode of Game of Thrones. Every single minute of the fight, they made $5 million each, which is more than what the New York Knicks make from one home game. And every single second of the fight, they made $93,000 each. That's more than what 85% of Americans make in 1 year. That makes the Paul vs. Joshua fight the second highest paid fight in 2025.
But it tells you how strange this fight felt to a lot of people watching. Joshua, a man who can end nights in minutes, waited until round 6 to unload, and that alone had timeline spinning.
Ask Jake out, make Jake hold his weight, and have the referee separate. That led to Jake, as soon as he felt AJ putting his weight on him or pushing him down, hitting the floor, diving at AJ's knees, and then eventually Jake would go to clinch and immediately fall to the ground on his own. And this became a problem because then it looked intentionally like Jake was going to the ground. There was one time where Jake went to the ground and AJ kept swinging on him. That I didn't like to see, but this was Jake's survival of the fittest moment. This was Darwinism in a boxing ring, right? He had to do whatever he could to just extend the fight and get one more, hope and pray shot, one more step back. He had a great step back uppercut, I think in the 4th round that almost, it clipped AJ. Honestly, you could see what AJ had said in their face-to-face, that he needed to break Jake's soul. He needed to break his will.
Add to that the way AJ looked unusually patient, almost slow by his own standards in the early rounds. And for some fans, that became another clue fueling the conspiracy chatter. People are saying, since when does Anthony Joshua stalk this calmly without pulling the trigger? Especially against a guy giving ground non-stop.
I think AJ was in a bit of a daze early on. Just walking him around, touching the jab on his shoulder, not really pulling the trigger on the right hand. Didn't look like he got out of first gear. Jake Paul was just on pure survival mode from round 1 right through to round 6. I don't know if he's got a moral victory going 6 rounds. Maybe he has. People might give him credit for going 6 rounds. But he got in there and just survived. He just went in there and ran like a chicken from round 1 right through to round 6 when he got splattered. And it's like, it's just, you can't really justify what he's done, because this is supposed to be a professional sanctioned boxing match. And I think it brings the integrity of the sport down when somebody like AJ is a 2-time world champion, can't get in there and just completely dismiss somebody like Jake Paul, who I've said for ages can't fight. He's not a professional boxer.
From there, the debate takes off. Some genuinely believe there's no universe where Jake Paul survives 6 rounds with a heavyweight puncher like AJ unless something delayed the ending. The argument goes that Joshua flattened seasoned pros quicker, yet here he was letting Jake circle, clinch, and run laps like he was avoiding airport security. That's where the whispers creep in. Half real fight, half pre-arranged pacing, stretch it out, then let reality arrive on schedule.
I wish that I could have knocked him out at the start. But as we saw tonight, Jake has spirit. He has some heart. He tried his best, and I take my hat off to him because, number one, a lot of fighters haven't got in the ring with me, and Jake did. And secondly, even when he got knocked down, he kept on trying to get up, and I take my hat off to him. So America, I think you have someone who could potentially, if he still has the heart for it, come back again, dust the dirt off his shoulder, and come again and maybe sell out this center sometime in 2026. Maybe against a Javonte Davis, a Ryan Garcia. Who knows?
And look, I'm not saying anything was fixed. Boxing doesn't work like that, but I understand why people raised eyebrows when AJ didn't press the button early and looked a gear slower than usual. In the end though, whatever theories fans want to cook up, Joshua finally let that right hand go with bad intentions. And the moment it landed, all conspiracy talk vanished instantly, because no script sends a jaw on an unplanned one-way trip to the South Pole. Whatever you believe about the build-up, the finish was pure heavyweight truth.
Or Jake would have moved around the ring at 100 miles an hour. There's two things I would have done. Tried to shut Jake down at 100 miles an hour, or I would have gone on the back foot. So Jake decided to move around the ring, and I decided to put the pressure on. What I could have done better is a lot of things, 100%. In the fight game, you've seen the amazing fighters that have graced us over the last 100 years. And the expectations that we put on ourselves are immense, but I tried my best.
And sliding smoothly from all that Paul Joshua chaos into Johnny Nelson's breakdown feels like switching from highlight noise to gym floor truth, because Johnny isn't here to sell dreams. He's here to pop them. Listening to him, you can almost hear the gloves thudding in his memories as he explains what every real fighter knows. A man who's decided to survive is the most annoying opponent in the world. Johnny paints Jake as a guy who saw a 22-foot ring, clocked Anthony Joshua standing there like a statue carved out of pressure, and instantly chose flight over fight.
Instinct is going to kick in. Instinctively, he ran. Instinctively, he tried to spoil. Instinctively, he just wanted to survive. And any fighter knows, the general public won't get it. Any fighter knows if you're in there with someone that just wants to survive, they are the hardest people to get rid of.
And honestly, when Johnny says that instinct kicks in, I believe him, because we all saw it. Once reality hit, the bold talk evaporated and survival mode took over. What I love is how he flips the frustration back onto AJ too, saying it's actually harder than it looks when someone refuses to engage, keeps dropping, keeps spoiling, keeps stealing time like it's a side hustle. Johnny's take that people wanted a clean cinematic knockout, but instead got the slow draining of confidence is cold but accurate, because this wasn't about flash, it was about inevitability.
To go and fight. I think Jake Paul had a reality check. So all these bold predictions that he was going to do. Reality kicked in once he was stood there in that big 22-foot ring with Anthony Joshua in the corner. All of a sudden, he's got to back up the post, and he's thinking, damn, I really have to back up the post. And then he realised once the bell had gone, this is real. So he did everything he could to survive. And in a way, I felt sorry for Anthony Joshua, because I thought, this guy, he didn't want to fight. He's going to keep moving and moving and moving. And yeah, Jake threw one or two desperate haymakers, hoping it'd hit something. And he did.
When he talks about that one clean shot finally landing and breaking Jake's resolve, not just his jaw, that's boxing language, not internet drama. He even gives Jake credit in a backhanded way, saying he created the moment, brought the eyes, played the business game perfectly. But once the bell rang, the fantasy had an expiration date. And the sharpest line in all of it is Johnny basically saying this didn't help AJ grow. It just reminded everyone who reality belongs to. No hype, no hatred, just a former pro telling you straight. When belief runs into experience, experience doesn't rush, it waits, and eventually it collects.
AJ was getting frustrated because he wanted that clean KO. And so the time when the one clean shot hit him, it broke his jaw and he went down. So he knew, realistically, if you're in a fight and you get hit, sometimes you're going to get hit and you'll try and bullshit and get your way through. The one clean shot we saw get hit with, he had a choice of staying up or going down. And he's like, nope. It was like a split second time delay. And he had to quit.
And flowing right out of Johnny Nelson's cold, old-school boxing logic, the vibe shifts again when Michael Bisping jumps in, because now it's less gym wisdom and more brutally honest couchside reaction. I'm listening to Bisping and I can tell instantly he's not buying the idea that this was some hidden classic you need to re-watch on a rainy day. He's basically saying, yeah, AJ won, but let's not pretend this was fireworks. And honestly, I get it. We all saw Joshua stalking like a man waiting for a bus that was late on purpose, while Jake treated the ring like a cardio track, circling, dipping, grabbing, and occasionally forgetting this wasn't MMA. Bisping calling AJ sloppy and tentative isn't hate, it's expectation, because when you've seen Joshua flatten real heavyweights, you expect menace, not patience that borders on polite.
First of all, they both stepped in the ring. They were paid $92 million. They both get to go home to their families, and no one got injured. No one's dead. No one's going to the hospital. They're both fine. Apparently, Jake Paul claims that he's got a broken jaw, spat a little bit of blood out, right? But the fight itself wasn't anything to remember. It really wasn't, right? Anthony Joshua was a little sloppy. He was tentative. He took his time. He said he was trying to break him down, look for the shots. And maybe it's because he'd been out the ring for 15 months, okay? And last went up against Daniel Dubois. Or maybe it's because he felt like a bit of a bully going up against Jake Paul, but he didn't seem like he really had nasty intention.
And the funniest part is Bisping admitting he looked away for a second and missed the finish, which honestly sums up the fight better than any scorecard. Jake shooting takedowns like he thought Herb Dean might jump in at any moment, the ref trying to remember which sport he was officiating, and AJ almost overthinking something that was always going to end one way. That's the chaos we watched. I like that Bisping keeps it fair though, because he respects the courage without pretending the strategy made sense, basically saying surviving isn't the same as competing. And when he compares it to real finishes, real exchanges, real danger, you hear the fighter in him saying this wasn't about skill gaps closing, it was about time running out. In the end, it felt like a spectacle that sold big, paid everybody, and reminded us that heavyweight boxing doesn't care how famous you are. Eventually, someone lands, and the story wraps itself up whether the pacing was pretty or not.
Jake Paul never worried Anthony Joshua once. He never rung his bell. He never caused any damage. He never had him worried. He never did anything. It wasn't a fight. It was a display of how long can Jake Paul last. Can he run away long enough for it to be credible? Can he stay away and disengage long enough to where he can be proud of going 6 rounds with Anthony Joshua? And it sounds like I'm being a hater. I'm not being a hater. I'm just saying what I saw, right? I don't think he was there to actually fight him. What was the game plan? Stick and move, try and lunge in, try and shoot in a takedown? No, that's not how you win a boxing fight.
And right as we step out of Bisping's brutally honest, that wasn't a classic lane. The mood softens just a touch when Eddie Hearn steps up, because now it's less roast session and more grown man perspective. I'm listening to Eddie, and you can hear that promoter-fighter translator mode kick in like, alright, jokes aside, let's acknowledge reality. He's basically saying, yeah, Jake ran, yeah, Jake held, but he also survived something that would have turned most heavyweights into instant highlight clips. And that right hand, Eddie's tone says it all. That wasn't a tap, that was a lights out invitation that somehow didn't end the night immediately. You don't have to love the style to respect the toughness. And Eddie giving Jake credit feels less like hype and more like boxing etiquette, the kind that says, you stepped in deep water, you didn't drown. It's funny how the narrative flips here. A guy who started as a novelty is now being discussed in terms like durability, recovery, and whether his jaw even wants to forgive him. That alone tells you how weird and wild this crossover era has become.
Even the shot that shattered his jaw would have knocked out most heavyweights. As in, I mean, I know he was knocked out, but as in cold. That was the right hand light he landed on and gone. And you saw what he did to him. So respect to Jake Paul. It's a very tough injury to come back from, that kind of injury. I don't know the severity of it, but if he has broken his jaw, you know, it's a tough one to come back from. But he's a crazy f***er, and we take our hat off to him.
And then Eddie pivots smoothly, because of course he does, into the bigger picture, and this is where I really leaned in. He admits the early rounds were frustrating, not because AJ was bad, but because you can't download data when the Wi-Fi keeps running away from you. New team, long layoff, awkward opponent, and suddenly those rounds turn into paid sparring with a man whose only mission is survival. Eddie basically says, if AJ flattened him in 45 seconds, people would cheer, but we'd learn nothing. Instead, Joshua gets rounds, patience, and a reminder that cutting the ring on a mover who refuses to trade is a skill test in itself. And I like how Eddie reframes Jake from average to decent, because that's not charity, that's evolution, not elite, not championship level, but good enough to make you work and uncomfortable. When a promoter gives that kind of measured respect, it hits different. So where Bisping saw a spectacle that underdelivered, Eddie saw value, rounds, and a reminder that this sport doesn't always reward fireworks. Sometimes it rewards survival, adjustments, and the uncomfortable truth that not every win looks pretty, but every win still counts.
But I was surprised at the amount of shots that he took in the end, and that he wasn't out cold. That's what I was surprised about, you know. And I said he's going to do very well to not get hurt in this fight. Unfortunately, he got badly hurt with his jaw, but still, he deserves a lot of credit.
AJ's performance, I mean,
Good. I mean, first 2 or 3 rounds, a little bit frustrating because you've been out of the ring for a year and a half, and you've got a guy that's just running around the ring, and you know you can say you've got to cut him off, but when they're moving at that kind of speed and they're holding up close, but his clinching was quite good, Jake. Like, listen, you know, I'm not saying he's going to go and win a world title, but he just fought Anthony Joshua and went 5 and a bit rounds.
So when you zoom out from all of it, the rumors, the patience, the survival tactics, the delayed explosion, the old school takes, the fighter critiques, and the promoter perspective, what you're really left with is a fight that sparked way more conversation than it delivered clean action. And maybe that was always the point. Some of you will say it felt strange, paced, even suspicious. Others will say it was just heavyweight reality meeting a mover who refused to cooperate, and honestly, both sides have arguments that make sense. That's why this one isn't done when the bell rings, for it lives in the debates, the replays, the what ifs, and the opinions that split timeline in half. So now I want to hear from you. Was this smart patience, awkward survival, or just a spectacle that ended exactly how it had to? Drop your take in the comments, keep it respectful, and yo, don't ever forget to like, share, and subscribe to Boxing Headquarters. See you in the next one.